They say nothing lives beyond the ice. But what if the greatest civilization in history is still buried there, waiting to wake up? Did you know that an ancient paradise once existed where we thought only ice could breathe? A world buried at the top of the earth, frozen now, but once alive with sunlight. They called it Hyperborea, the land beyond the north wind. To the Greeks it wasn't fantasy. It was a kingdom of eternal light, where the sun never set, where sickness never came, and where men lived like gods. No hunger, no war, no death, only harmony, and an endless dawn that never faded. Imagine a civilization untouched by darkness, hidden beneath the very pole we now call barren. For centuries scholars laughed at the idea. They called it myth, a dream born from poetry. But they were wrong, because modern science now whispers something different, that the Arctic was once green, fertile, alive. And if that's true, then maybe Hyperborea wasn't a myth at all. Maybe it was a memory waiting to rise again, from under the ice. The North wasn't always frozen. Once, it was alive. Can you imagine the Arctic without ice? A land of rivers, forests, and endless summer light. Science now confirms what myth once whispered. During the ancient Holocene warm period, the poles were not wastelands. They were green, fertile, alive with life. What if the Greeks were not dreaming but remembering? Remembering a time when the top of the world was paradise. Geologists have found proof. Fossils of forests, bones of animals that once grazed where glaciers now rule. Warm winds once flowed across the very land we now call uninhabitable. So could Hyperborea have stood there before the Great Freeze began? A real civilization, lost not imagined? If Egypt carried memories of Atlantis, then perhaps Greece carried the memory of Hyperborea. And that raises the question: who lived there? Who were the beings that walked in sunlight while the rest of the world still hid in shadow? Because if the Arctic was once alive, then its silence may still hide the echoes of those who came before. They were not like us, not made for struggle, but for light. Who were the ones that lived in that vanished paradise? Ancient writers called them the Hyperboreans, beings of tall stature, fair faces, and eyes that seemed to carry the sun itself. They didn't conquer nature. They lived with it. Every breath, every movement flowed in harmony with the earth around them. Can you imagine a people who never aged? Who never knew sickness or deceit? Their world had no lies. Because their minds were open, thought spoke louder than words. To live among them was to live in complete truth. They drew energy not from fire or war, but from balance, from the quiet pulse of the planet itself. While the rest of the world learned to take, they learned to radiate. Maybe that's why their light lasted so long. Maybe that's why legends say their lives stretched for centuries. And as the ages passed, humanity forgot. We built machines, they built harmony. We rose through force, they rose through understanding. So who truly advanced? The ones with power or the ones with peace? Because the more we uncover about them, the clearer it becomes. They stood closer to the divine than we ever have. And even the gods envied them. Every winter the god of light abandoned Greece. Why would Apollo, the bringer of truth, music, and prophecy, leave the land that worshipped him? Because his true home was not in Greece. It was in Hyperborea. Ancient legends say that when winter came, Apollo rose above the winds of the north and vanished beyond the mountains, to the land of eternal sunlight, where the radiant ones welcomed him as one of their own. There, he was not a god among mortals. He was simply home. They say his golden chariot rested in the crystal valleys of Hyperborea, that his lyre echoed across temples made of light, and that his spirit renewed itself among the people who lived without shadow. Could that be why he returned each spring more powerful, his music brighter, his visions clearer than before? Greek poets wrote that Hyperborea was Apollo's sanctuary, a realm untouched by time, where he could walk freely among beings as pure as his light. And maybe that's why the Greeks built their temples the way they did, to mirror what they could no longer reach. Because the truth is, their sacred rituals, their hymns, even their oracles, were all echoes of a wisdom that came from beyond the north wind. The Greeks thought they were worshipping Apollo, but perhaps through him, they were worshipping Hyperborea itself. a place so divine. Even the gods sought refuge there. But the Greeks never built their greatest temple, because it already existed in the north. An island the size of Sicily, crowned by a temple of light. That's how the ancient historian Diodorus Siculus described Hyperborea. He spoke of a shining city, built from crystal and stone, and at its heart stood a temple, perfect and round, its walls glowing in the light of the never-setting sun. Can you imagine it? A temple so large, so perfect in shape, that it moved with the rhythm of the stars above it. Diodorus said it was dedicated to Apollo, the god who returned there every winter to be reborn. Its shape, a perfect sphere, symbolized harmony between heaven and earth. But here's the question. Why did so many ancient cultures build the same kind of sacred design? Stonehenge in England, the pyramids of Egypt, solar temples in South America, all aligned with the path of the sun and the stars. Could that be a coincidence? Or were they all following one forgotten blueprint, a design that began in Hyperborea? If every ancient civilization worshipped the sun in the same way, maybe it's because they remembered something older than all of them. The Greeks said the temple of Hyperborea glowed with divine energy, a light that came from within the stone itself, a living architecture that breathed with the cosmos. So if the design of that temple survived through time, then what else might have survived with it? If their architecture endured, what about their power? Imagine a city that glowed, alive with vibration, not powered by fire or metal or machines, but by light itself. Could such a place have really existed? Ancient stories say yes. They tell us that the people of Hyperborea built their cities from crystal, living stones that could sing, heal, and shine. These crystals weren't decoration. They were the heart of their civilization. They carried energy through resonance, vibration, not wires. When the wind passed through their towers, it created sound, pure tones that healed the body and calmed the mind. They used sound the way we use medicine. They tuned life itself. And how did they light their cities? By awakening the energy inside the earth. They knew how to draw power from the planet's magnetic fields, turning harmony into electricity. What if that knowledge still lies frozen beneath the Arctic ice? Even today, satellites detect strange magnetic fields in the far north, places where compasses spin, and the air itself hums with invisible power. Some say it's just the Earth's poles shifting. Others believe it's something else. The last breath of a forgotten machine still pulsing under the ice. Maybe those signals we call anomalies are not random at all. Maybe they're the echoes of Hyperborea's lost technology, a voice trying to be heard again. And that hum might be the heartbeat of a sleeping world. In Hyperborea, thought itself was power. Can you imagine a world where the mind was stronger than any machine? Where a single thought could move stone, heal the body, or shape reality itself? The Hyperboreans lived in that world. For them, telepathy was not a gift, it was language. They spoke without words, shared emotion through energy, and lived without secrets, because every thought was heard. If minds could connect, then lies, hate, and greed could not survive. Their society didn't need laws, it was built on pure consciousness. But it went deeper than communication. They could move matter through intention. What we call psychokinesis, they called harmony, the perfect balance between thought and form. How did they learn this? The Greeks thought they were gods. But maybe they were something else. Scientists of spirit, explorers of the invisible. When their minds aligned, they could leave their bodies and travel across the earth, seeing, mapping, and recording places no ship could reach. Ancient maps once showed coastlines hidden under ice. Were they drawn by hands, or by minds? The Hyperboreans mastered consciousness, the same way we master technology. They didn't build machines. They became them. And maybe, that's where their story changed. Because when thought grows stronger than stone, when mind bends the laws of nature, the earth itself responds. Paradise doesn't end slowly, it shatters. What happens when the mind grows stronger than the world around it? When a civilization learns to command energy itself. Some say, the earth pushed back. It began with a tremor, a shift in the planet's heart. Then came the cold. The winds turned violent. The skies darkened. and the land of eternal sunlight was swallowed by ice. Scientists today call it a pole shift, a sudden turning of the planet that froze warm lands overnight. Forests became glaciers, rivers turned to crystal, and the radiant cities of Hyperborea were gone. They say people were frozen mid-breath, their shining towers sealed in ice within hours, just like the mammoths of Siberia, still found today perfectly preserved, with food still in their mouths. Could this have been the same catastrophe? A moment when the sky fell silent and light itself died? Others tell a different story, of fire raining from the heavens, of comets that split the sky, of oceans that rose and drowned the earth. And what if it was all connected? The flood that destroyed Atlantis, the freeze that buried Hyperborea, two faces of one global disaster. The world turned, the axis shifted, and paradise disappeared beneath the storm. But even as the ice claimed their cities, their light did not fade completely, because the legends say, not all of them died. After the ice, the teachers came. From the ruins of Hyperborea, luminous beings journeyed south, carrying the memory of a lost world. They taught humanity how to read the stars, how to plant, build, and live in harmony with the earth. India called them Itharakuru. Persia named them Arianavaja. And in the Norse sagas they became the gods of Asgard. Different names. Same light. The same forgotten source. Perhaps civilization didn't begin from nothing, but from survivors of the North. And if that's true, their blood still walks among us. Beneath the Arctic sleeps a memory, waiting to wake. Maybe Hyperborea never vanished. Maybe it retreated, buried itself beneath the ice, waiting for the earth to turn again. Science calls it myth. History calls it legend. But deep down, humanity remembers. Once we lived in harmony with the planet, not against it. Once our hearts moved with the rhythm of the earth, not the noise of machines. And when the ice finally melts, perhaps something ancient will rise with it, a light older than civilization itself. Because the next awakening will not begin in fire, but in the thawing of an ancient light. And when it does, the world will remember who we were.